Hi everybody, and welcome to the recap of Game 8 of the Women's World Championship match between Wenjun and Lei Tingjie. Wenjun was white in this game in a very important game for her white pieces, and after an exciting roller coaster game, she managed to equalize the score. Let's take a look how it happened, because a lot has happened in this game. After a very slow start by the world champion, she wanted to get out of long opening lines. She wanted to get some slow positional play. She managed to get this. Both players were spending equal time on this in the opening stage of the game, and we kind of reached a balanced position with hanging pawns in the center. After d takes c4, we can see b takes c4. Each of the sides has its own merits, its pros and cons in the position. And the first important moment came here, where the world champion chose to go c5. This is a move which is normally not considered to be advisable for white, because it gives black a very good squares. It stabilizes the pawn structure for white. However, Wenjun's point was that her positions, her pieces are so dominating that it's very hard for black to find a good move. But Lei Tingjie did find a fantastic resource, just as she had done in many times before. She sacrificed the pawn, a very, very strong positional sacrifice, but that allowed her to exchange many pieces to activate her own pieces. And now we can see that black pieces are well coordinated, whereas white pieces are poorly coordinated. There is a problem with the a3 pawn, with the bishop on b2. All in all, this was a very strong sequence by black, which allowed her to equalize the game, followed by this very strong queen a5 move. The white queen on a4 is extremely strong. It protects the pawn on d4, the pawn on a3. Once it's exchanged and the rooks are exchanged, white cannot hold this pawn on a3 anymore. And Wenjun went for the best practical chance she had to play d5 to activate this bishop, and use the fact that the e file is pinned, the pawn on e6 is pinned because the bishop on e7 hanging. But here the challenger Lei Tingjie could have had a very, very simple, very practical way to make the draw by sacrificing a pawn on e6, but forcing all the rooks to be exchanged, and then she could even go further and exchange another pair of minor pieces. And 3 against 2 is really a very drawish position. Almost no chances for white. Instead, she played an inaccurate move, knight b3, after which it already becomes very tricky for black to defend. The position still remains about drawish. It's not equal. White has the domination, but it becomes much more tricky for black to hold. For instance, here after d takes e6, the best chance was to still take on a3. Of course, if you want to take on a3, it was much better to take on the previous move. Lei Tingjie took on e6, and now after bishop e5, it's no longer so clear how black can defend her position, because the a3 pawn is still alive. It wants to run all the way to the last rank, so it has to be taken. But now white has a very concrete way to use the fact that black pieces are a little bit caught up on the third rank. Here the computer says after knight e1, white is winning. Not an easy win, but still objectively winning. The only move, bishop d1, then rook d3, hitting the bishop. Wenjun said that she was calculating this for some time. For a human, it can be extremely not clear, extremely scary to go into this, because the knight is going to be pinned along the first rank. The bishop can jump, but the computer still finds a way to win. A check on d8, then knight d3, a very important resource. And here, for instance, there is such a beautiful line. Another important move, rook a7, hitting this bishop, and then followed by a move like, for instance, if you take the knight on c3, a beautiful, beautiful line, bishop c6 check, king goes to d8, rook d7 check. If the king goes back, we don't take back the bishop. We take on g7, threatening a checkmate in 1. The king has to go back. We check from c7. The bishops are blocking the king, and the mate on next move is inevitable. An impossible line to see for a human, of course, but objectively we have to say this was winning for white. Instead, the world champion played knight d4, a much more human and normal move. But after this sequence, bishop knight c6, a very strong move, forcing the game to transfer into an inferior opposite color bishop endgame with rooks, which gives white good practical chances for a win. The computer still says it's a draw, but for a human it's not easy to hold the position. Probably h5 was the better move, preventing white from advancing her pawns too far away. However, black went for a passive defense, and somewhere around here she started going wrong. Here, Lei Tingjie had a good opportunity to still equalize the game with the beautiful rook b4 move. Very difficult to find for a human. The point being that we are threatening bishop f5 to hit the pawn, to take the pawn on g4, and if white defends with f3, we have bishop d5 followed by rook b7. Very important checkmate for the rook, checkmating the white rook, and forcing the exchange, after which we get a theoretically drawn position in a opposite color bishop ending. Not an easy move to find. Lei Tingjie, in a press conference, she said that she wanted to activate her pieces, and for that she sacrificed the second pawn. Now this is already losing for black, because the white pawns cannot be stopped. However, we still had one dramatic moment down the road. Around here, at this moment, Wenjun made a slightly careless move, king f2, and now after rook d2, king e3, black could just check on d3, play rook d4, a fantastic resource, using the fact that the rook on e7 is hanging, and the rook on d4 cannot be taken because this is a draw, and f4 pawn cannot be protected, because if the king goes back to protect the pawn, we just keep checking the king away from the pawn and repeating the position. This was a golden opportunity missed by the challenger, by Lei Tingjie. After she played rook d6, it was actually missed by both players. After black played rook d6, there is no longer anything that can save her. White simply maneuvers the rook to the f file, breaking this kind of fortress, which is not a fortress. And the main idea being, and we will see this in the game, that white will eventually just sacrifice on g6, and the pawn rushes through for promoting the queen. And here the challenger Lei Tingjie resigned the game, and we are again in an equal match, 4 points each, 4 games to go. Everything can happen here in Chongqing. Stay with us.